Hey, this is Rich Gaspari, and we're here at Beyond the Muscle and have Dr. Ara here, and I'm really excited. We've had you already on the show, and we had so much to talk about, so I'm having you on again so we can continue this conversation that we had, to help these elite athletes and people that are getting older like myself that want to stay young.
Well, you look pretty good, though, I say.
But I'm still trying to beat Father Time, and Father Time always wins.
Oh, it's unbeaten, no matter what you think.
He always wins. And you look at Jimmy Carter, he lived to 100 years old.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing, the oldest president. So that's the great thing to see. But I want to live 100 years, still running, lifting, doing everything I can.
100 good years.
Yeah, you'll have good years because, you can live long, but then you can live this we call it low quality life.
Yeah, and I think that's where I don't like the word anti-aging because as I told you before, there's some beautiful things happen as you get older. Like you're wiser.
Definitely wiser.
Definitely wiser, hopefully. And when you know yourself, you have more confidence. Life is just evolved, and you have the experience. So it's not a bad thing, but the body breaks down. And that's why we want to slow that down, right? So this anti-aging refers to just 1-2 segments of the aging processes. And I like a word called aging gracefully, which means your brain is still sharp, but you can run, you can talk, you can do everything, you can compete, you can do whatever you want physically, right? That would be the ideal place to be.
And the thing is you can train, you can think you're eating properly, you think you're doing all the right things to age gracefully.
Yeah.
But the one thing that was really interesting you talked about is that you become a specialist in biomarkers.
Yeah.
In, testing your blood. And you've done mine, you gave me suggestions, what I needed to do, because I think I'm doing, good things, but you found little things that I was doing incorrectly, and I tried to improve on those.
Yeah.
Let's talk about biomarkers. Let's talk about what you could do with the certain blood tests that you can, give to somebody or get them to do to find out what they can do to stay younger, or like we talked about athletes, you do these biomarkers to help them improve and being a better athlete.
Yes.
So go into how did you get into this whole thing with biomarkers?
Okay. So coming back to it, so biomarkers, right? They are bio, meaning your biology, and then markers. So markers that represent your biology, right? So this could be blood work, could be saliva, could be stool, could be urine, could be swabs, could be hair analysis, skin analysis, also.
Even the one that you talked about in the early episode.
With the continuous blood glucose, that's measuring your blood work, right? Okay, so that's all of these things fall under the category of biomarkers. All right, like when you go to see your doctor, your annual, you get blood work done, that they give you a set of results. Those are results from a blood biomarker.
Yes.
All right. So traditional medical practices look for disease, right? As I started evolving, I started understanding I need to look for biomarkers to help with performance. Okay, and so you can use the same biomarkers, but you got to look at it differently. So a couple of examples, right? We talked about the omega-3. For everyone, you take 2 capsules, that's what the bottle says. But for an athlete, it's a bit like you. When you were training as a body, like if I went to the gym and I did bench press, deltoid raises, squat, if I did all my patterns, right? Pull, push, hinge, squat, lunges, I've done most of the things, right? That's not going to get me to compete as a bodybuilder. When you talk about it, when you guys talk about it, I mean, you use 5-6 exercises to hit the tricep because every head is different. You want it to be denser, you want it to be smaller, you want it to be sharper, you want the pack to round out. This line, I heard it, and I'm like, what are these guys talking about, right? It's completely different. So at a nuanced level, when you're really looking at blood work for performance, for aging gracefully, then you got to get more sophisticated, because I'm not going to tell you, Rich, you need fish oil, take 2, here's the brand. No, I'm going to say, Rich, in January, we're going to run a blood work, and I'm going to tell you exactly how much fish oil you need. You may need 6 capsules, and you're going to do that for 3 months. Then we're going to recheck it to see if you caught up and see what you need to maintain you.
What about the type of foods that you can eat as well? Maybe increase my intake of salmon.
Yes. On top of that, when I talk about omega-3 supplementation, it's supplementing your diet. Okay. Fundamentally, it starts with the diet. So I would say, hey, cut down on these because these are more omega-6, and let's go down, more along these which are more omega-3. On top of that, if I really want to expedite the process, I can supplement you with more omega-3, right? But again, that conversation and the strategy that I build with you is based on a biomarker called omega-3 index. Okay, that's just one. I could look at chronic inflammation. Most times people just look at one biomarker. They look at something called the CRP, which is a marker for inflammation, or the ESR, which is a marker for inflammation. I was working the ER one time, okay, and this guy comes in, and this was in England, and young guy, shot up drugs, came in with a huge abscess, okay. It was red, there was pus coming out of it, didn't smell good, it was warm, I mean, he had a fever. You don't need to be a doctor. You know that thing is bad. You know it's inflamed, okay. I ran his CRP and it was normal. The inflammatory marker was normal. So I asked my boss and I said, hey, like my supervisor, like I said, hey, clearly it's inflamed. Why is the CRP normal? Couldn't give me an answer. It haunted me for years. And then I found out through a very interesting research paper that CRP is just one type of inflammatory marker, right? So you know how some kids, when they get sick, they spike a super high fever?
Yeah.
And some kids don't? That's a genetic makeup. So some people will make a lot of CRP, some people won't. So if I just went with one biomarker and I just said, hey, your CRP is normal, you're not inflamed, I'm not necessarily correct. I can't go with that. So when I look at inflammation in athlete, chronic inflammation, I'm looking at the CRP, I'm looking at the homocysteine, I'm looking at the albumin, the ferritin, and then there's something called the neutrophil lymphocyte ratio. So
those are all indicators for inflammation.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, most of those, apart from the homocysteine, is found in a regular blood test. But it's knowing how to look at those specifically. That's what I trained myself over the last 20 years.
And what they indicate is normal. Are you more of a specialist to see those levels?
Yeah.
Maybe you are normal on a blood work, but
Correct.
not normal.
Yes, for you. For instance, like the range for blood sugar is 70 to 99. If your blood sugar was 98 right now, fasting blood sugar, I would not be happy with you.
That wouldn't be healthy.
That's not healthy.
Yeah.
So my range is 70 to 85. I need it in a tighter band, right? So that's where, when we talk about biomarkers, it's knowing what biomarkers. It's not just looking at one biomarker on its own, it's putting combinations together, right? And then looking at ratios and then tightening up the range. It's very, very similar to how you are in the gym. As I'm saying this, I'm like, that's exactly how you train.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. If you went and say, I'm going to do, it's my pec day. Is that a thing?
Pec day,
like a
chest day.
Okay, chest day. Okay. So let's say it's a chest day, right? You're going to say, okay, today I want to hit my lower pecs and I want it to be denser or shaped this way or whatever. And so you're going to put a combination of exercises together.
Declines, dips, whatever you're going to do to hit.
Right.
Cable crossover.
Okay.
Lower pec.
So you're going to put all of them. Those machines are always there.
Yeah.
But you know how to put those things
those
differently to look at something very specific.
Specialize in that area.
Biomarkers are the same. I spent 20 years looking at both sick population in the hospital as well as I have probably the largest database of blood biomarkers on athletes of 20 years.
So you look at, there's so many different biomarkers to bring in what you just said, megasecond, whatever you want to call it, 0.001 second to go from first to third. So you're looking at that athlete to see that his biomarkers are straight on.
As much as we can.
He's at it
Correct.
before that event. Once you know the biomarkers, they're off.
Yeah.
Then you got to give them
strategies to bring them back.
Yeah.
And again, there are some biomarkers, like for instance, if you're on an intense training block, your inflammatory markers should be high.
It should be high.
If it's not high, I'm going to come to you and your coach and say, hey guys, this kid, you can step on the gas more. You can push this girl or this guy harder because the response isn't there yet. There's plenty more left to
more
take.
into that.
Yes.
Even though it may be off.
Even though they think they're doing a lot, I'm looking at the biomarkers going, this person can still be a beast.
When I get blood work, there's always one of the markers have to do with your liver. And my enzymes are always...
Your AST.
Yeah, they're always higher. And that's because I'm weight training.
Yes.
5 days a week.
Yes, correct.
And the other doctors that don't know that say, oh, this is
No.
absurd.
Yeah.
But then I have other people that know I weight train and go, this guy...
No, look at you. I mean, your AST is going to be high. Your creatine is going to be high.
It's always...
So if you go to a regular person who's not familiar with it, and it's not because they're bad doctors or anything like that, it's just they're not trained in that, right? They look at the biomarkers. So here's the thing. Look at how much muscle mass you have, right? If you went to a regular hospital and did blood work, okay, they'll give you the range, your creatine, your kidney marker, right? It will be in a range. It's the same range as an 80-year-old fragile female or fragile male, or the same as a 21-year-old, skinny, weedy college kid. How is that the same? I mean, look how much muscle mass you have. How is the range the same for both people?
And why is that?
That's just how it's been developed over the years, right?
Okay.
So for you, I would expect your creatine to be high because you have so much muscle mass, right?
What's the supplement with creatine?
Yeah, so there's creatine, which is a supplement, and the blood test for the kidney is the creatinine.
Creatinine.
Yeah, so the creatinine is going to be high in someone like you, right? And so I need another marker to really look at the kidney. I can't use that, okay? Similarly, most people don't know that the AST and ALT even is also produced in muscle. So if I just see that high, it's not just a liver marker. You have so much muscle mass. If you work out hard, the AST is going to be high.
Mine is always high.
Always high.
I always say, these are a little high.
Yeah. And then next thing they want to get an ultrasound.
And I done all.
It was all normal.
And then it was normal, and it said there's no problem with me because it's because of the weight training.
Yeah.
I found.
So again, so when you look at biomarkers, right? Another simple example I'll give you. I had an athlete who came up to me and said, "Hey doc, I'm drinking a ton, I'm using my electrolytes, but I just feel like when I play in the heat," he's a golfer. "When I play in the heat, I have extreme heat, I get lightheaded, even though I'm drinking a lot. What's going on? Okay, am I not drinking enough?" I did a sweat test on this guy. This guy, his sweat was so high in sodium, he was off the charts.
High in sodium.
Very high. So if he were to take the normal suggested electrolyte supplement, that's not going to be enough for him.
It's not enough.
It's not enough.
You said he had high sodium, wasn't that?
He was losing.
Oh, he was losing sodium.
So if I were to replace...
So he needed more electrolyte.
He needs more sodium in his electrolyte.
Yeah.
Right? So he needs to pick electrolyte, because electrolytes for sodium, they have the ones that are about 300 milligrams, then there's 500 milligrams, and then
this has to be much higher.
This is there's a 1,000.
There's
right?
a good biomarker that by just improving that he's going to play better.
Play better. Concentrate better, right?
Yeah.
Similar, so we can look at that from biomarkers for inflammation. We can look at biomarkers for energy. We can look at biomarkers to see, are you able to detoxify? Especially a lean athlete, which doesn't have much body fat, and if they get exposed to a bunch of toxins, they can't mop those toxins up because a lot of toxins are harbored in fat. And if you don't have much body fat, where does it go? It goes in the bone, goes in all the other areas, right? So looking at biomarkers to make sure you are able to detoxify. Looking at biomarkers to say, you can train harder or you need to back off the training. Then to look at the hormonal response.
That's another thing. You look at testosterone, pre-testosterone, total testosterone, estrogen, all these things to look.
Sex hormone binding. But I look at that in conjunction with sex hormone binding globulins, right? So I look at all the anabolic hormones and I look at the catabolic hormones. Right? And I want to see, so if you're in anabolic phase, this needs to be higher and this needs to be lower. But let's say you're super stressed and you're trying to work, preparing for a tournament, and you're trying to work out super hard and you're trying to be anabolic, but in the meantime, you just moved house or you had a bereavement.
Cortisol levels?
That's one of them is cortisol, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at cortisol, I'm looking at DHEA, I'm looking at pregnenolone, I'm looking at testosterone, and then I'm looking at estradiol, and then I'm seeing, what's the sex hormone binding globulin doing, and I'm looking at ratio. I'm not looking at individual ones, I'm looking at them in ratio. What is the cortisol to testosterone ratio doing, right? And so that's where it's nuanced. So yes, the biomarkers, everyone can look at it. I always say it like this. I see the same numbers, but I see a different picture. Yeah. And now over 20 years, I managed to put a platform together where I can look at a lot of blood markers very quickly and have my own database and can analyze them very fast. So that's one thing. And then we look at nutrition, simple thing. Omega-3 index is one. Continuous blood sugar monitor to know, what foods spike your blood sugar truly for you.
Yeah.
Because I can look at...
Everybody's different.
Everyone's different. Yeah. Because if you look at, the Harvard glycemic index, it will say to you, don't eat white rice because it's very high. Well, it doesn't say that. It says white rice will spike your blood sugar.
Yeah.
But I know...
I don't think it does.
But I know a ton of people...
Yeah, that eat white rice.
I measured it. It doesn't spike the blood sugar.
It doesn't do it.
No,
and it's funny. Regular white rice doesn't do it, but if I eat cream of rice, it'll spike my blood sugar. That one is it's almost to be like sugar.
Okay.
And I've used it for a competition, and I saw it raise my insulin levels.
Yeah.
And then what happened was I held water.
Yeah.
I saw that.
It's inflammatory.
Yeah, it was inflammatory.
So, isn't that amazing information to know for yourself?
I knew because I experimented with, we talked about experimenting with my body.
Instead of experimenting,
I could have that monitor on it.
And then you know exactly.
Yeah. I mean, so.
And then you can also add combinations, right? So if I had white rice, and let's say it does spike my blood sugar, but now if I have white rice with beans or avocado or fats usually, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't spike as high.
It causes it.
So that's again really good information for you, right? So omega-3 index, continuous blood sugar, and then you can measure, especially for athletes, I think this is really important. And the younger you are, the more you should do this. You should look at your food sensitivity. So I want to make a distinction. I am allergic to shellfish. Okay, so if I eat shellfish, I'm going to blow up. My eyes are lump. You won't be talking. I give myself an EpiPen and I go to the ER. Okay, that is a true allergy. Okay, but if I were to eat corn, I don't break out in anything. But man, the next day I am tired. I'm achy. I'm sensitive to corn, very sensitive to corn.
You talk about sensitivities. I did this. You talk about experimentation. Like I said, I always use my body as an experiment. And what I did is I said, carbohydrates are all the same. So then I tried to diet just on wheat products.
Okay.
Pasta. I was holding water. I saw I had a film of water on my skin. And I cut out same amount of grams of carbohydrates, changed it to rice and sweet potatoes. I got rid of the water. Water retention was gone.
Okay.
So is that an allergy?
That's a sensitivity.
Sensitivity. And I saw that if I ate wheat products, I could not diet I would be in shape and all of it. But I'm talking about that elite level. I was for the most ripped bodybuilder. I was skinless. I want to make sure that my body fat was so low, but that I had no water retention on the skin itself. And I found that I was eating any type of wheat products.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Okay, so that's amazing because I would never have thought that about you because you're Italian.
But it's still it didn't.
Right? But see, that's where logic goes out the window because you tested it and you said every time I eat wheat, I'm retaining water, which is a sign of sensitivity, inflammation, right? You could have tested that. Right. You could have seen it straight away. And then you can get strategic again.
I don't know if they were doing that in the late 80s.
No, they weren't. The technology is not. So, again, I'm very particular, right? Like someone just came and said, can I just do a food sensitivity? And I go, you can, but I can't interpret it. But I don't know your symptoms. I don't know the other inflammatory markers. So you got to look at it, the whole picture. The food sensitivity is also very useful to know, if I avoid wheat.
What about gluten?
Same.
Gluten sensitivities. So that's what I found out. I couldn't use. You think that's what it was? I was gluten sensitive.
No. So wheat has 20 different proteins in it.
Okay.
Gluten is just one type of protein.
Okay.
You got gliadin, you got anti-gliadin, you got.
See, I thought it was gluten sensitive.
Gluten more.
Cut out gluten.
Yes.
Free diet.
You might be, but if a gluten-free diet by definition usually just takes out a lot of the wheat.
Yes.
Right. But here's the key distinction: if you take out such a large group of carbohydrate sources, and you want to make sure you're still getting the calories you need, you got to find the right carbs to replace that with. Right? So that's why things like food sensitivities are really useful. Now you add to that a stool test, okay? The stool test is going to tell me what your microbiome is like. And that is really important to know.
What's microbiome?
Microbiome is the bacteria in your gut.
Okay.
The healthy bacteria in your gut, right? You want to know that you have, think of a tribe, okay? You want to know that the tribe is diverse. It has, short people, tall people who can see at night, people who can't see at night, fast people, slow people, people who can dig, people who can climb. You want diversity, right? And you want a large group of people. So the bacteria, you analyze the bacteria the same. You want diversity and you want a large amount.
And people don't realize that utilizing your nutrients are more important than anything.
Correct.
And people don't look at digestive enzymes.
Exactly where I'm going with this. So you do a stool test. Now I can see, hey, you're, especially if an athlete or someone is prone to getting colds, flu, right? I want to look at the gut because that's where the immune system is. So the stool sample will tell me what the diversity of the microbiome is. Do they have the species that tend to be more protective against viruses, okay? Then it looks at digestive enzyme. Do you have that? Because sometimes, and as you get older, you produce less.
But also, if you're on antibiotic,
you destroy the microbiome.
So then that person doesn't use any probiotics.
Or prebiotics.
Right?
Do you need prebiotics to make butyric acid to keep that whole environment healthy, right? Do you have enough of that? Do you need to put in different bacteria? That's one. And then digestive enzyme.
I found that as I've gotten older, that I do have problem in digestion.
Yes.
And that I've taken now prebiotics and probiotics and digestive enzymes.
Yes.
Because I still want to be able to.
Correct.
I believe also someone older needs more protein as you age.
I think you need more protein because the ability to assimilate that protein and put it into muscle gets slower.
And I noticed that I increased my protein intake.
Yeah.
And able to keep
the body volume. Yeah. So the key thing with that is being able to digest that protein, right?
Yes.
So we know the amount of stomach acid that you make goes down as you get older. You make less stomach acid, right? So if you're going to eat the same amount of protein, and the first step of protein breakdown happens in the stomach. So you got to make sure like you can eat the best source of the protein, but if you can't digest it because you don't have the enzymes, because you're getting older, you need to make sure you supplement that accordingly.
You see that in biomarkers as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's in the stool test.
Oh, wow. So
And that's what I'm saying, like there's so much information and things we can study, and then I can be very strategic. So let's say we did a full slew of that, right? I can look at you and say, Rich, you're training to go into this competition. It looks like you're not training hard enough. You can actually train harder. Or I can say, Rich,
you're overtraining.
you're overtraining.
And how would you see, what are the biomarkers for that?
So one is I'll see the chronic inflammatory markers go up. I will see the ratio between the anabolic and the catabolic hormones off. So now you're more catabolic than anabolic.
Yeah, that's called overtraining.
Yes.
Someone's in a catabolic state.
In a catabolic state.
Yeah.
But then I look at things like ferritin. But one of the most important biomarkers, which is actually not a test, is your heart rate. So I want to, people wear the Oura ring or the Whoop.
Yeah.
I want to look at your wearable device and see if your heart rate is starting to creep up. If your resting heart rate is starting to creep up, that shows under recovery or overreaching, meaning the training load is too much and you're not fully recovering between training bouts. At that point, if you put in a rest period, you're going to be really good.
Or less in the training. You could be training.
Or you can taper.
Right?
But so the rest can be absolute rest, or you can taper, and then you'll see that boom, you go up.
Again, these are all things that with my body, I've done it more
intuitively.
But I probably, if I would have had these markers,
you would know.
I would know.
You would be even more targeted.
Yes.
And then if you don't, and you just say, oh, you know what, my performance is dropping. And instead of realizing you're either overtraining or overreaching, you say, I need to train even harder. Now you're going to be overtrained. Now, overreaching, you can recover within 10 days.
Okay.
2 weeks. Overtraining sometimes can last for months.
Really?
Yeah, years. I've seen athletes years overtrained, cannot get them.
For years?
Yeah, brutal. True overtraining. I've seen one case in 20 years of true overtraining because it affects the endocrine, affects the thyroid, affects the adrenals.
So those are what are off the thyroid, the adrenals, and all the. So they can take years, and you have to give them medicine, or
No.
kind of let it heal on its own.
Let the body give it time.
On its own.
Give it time, give it sleep, give it what it needs. Time, nutrition, sleep, and then the right mental state to recover. Because it's devastating for the athlete, right? So I can look at the biomarkers and say, step on the gas or back off. I can look at the biomarkers and say, I need you to take supplements like this. I need you to take this one for this much for this long. And then we're going to retest and we may change it. That's why I don't think how is everyone on the same amount of supplements all year long? It just makes no sense to me.
Dr. Ara, I was going to ask you, what are the 3 most important supplements to take? But it all depends on your body, correct? And what's needed. But what do you think? Just for me talking to you, electrolytes seem to be number 1 for most people.
I think you absolutely need to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
And you don't want to make the mistake of drinking pure water and not replacing electrolytes, especially if you're working out, right?
So that would be important. If someone can't do biomarkers, make sure you're getting a proper amount of electrolytes.
Yeah.
Drinking, stay hydrated, but having electrolytes.
Yeah. And then given today's diet, I think a really good multivitamin without a bunch of
fillers. You believe in, it's funny, I go to doctors, you can just take multivitamins. That's expensive urine.
Yeah.
It's not worth taking.
Yeah.
But I always believe that it's impossible to get all nutrients from foods alone.
Correct.
And nobody eats perfectly.
Correct.
Vegetables. So I would say, I take a multivitamin. I have a multivitamin, not because they only sell multivitamins, but I believe in them.
Yeah.
Because I believe they work.
Here's the thing, let's say, I'll give you an example, like manganese. What food says manganese? You don't know. Chances are you're not eating enough manganese, right?
They could be off with your biomarker.
You are hoping that you pick it up from different foods somewhere along the line, you get enough manganese. It's a trace element, but it's a cofactor in enzyme function. So the body needs that.
Yeah.
And if you're a little bit off there, a little bit off of selenium, a little bit off of copper, these small things, it's going to be having a profound effect on the body.
If you just take a multivitamin, a lot of them have trace elements.
They have all that,
Yes.
right? So now you just cross that off. You don't have to worry about that. If you're traveling, you're competing. And again, if you're getting older, if you're super stressed, your ability to absorb and digest food is changing all the time, right? The female athlete, the menstrual cycle, it's even more. So taking a multivitamin gives you tick that box off. At least I know I'm taking it. Now, really, really important. The quality of the multivitamin is very important.
So important.
If you put nonsense in, you're going to make everything expensive
And there's a lot of cheap
Correct. That's where the doctor's right. Like, you want to make
methylated vitamins. You believe in like using higher quality B vitamin or methylated. So I sell a lot of those because I believe they're more bioavailable. You're going to use
the methyl group also is useful to them. But
chelated minerals.
Chelated minerals.
Yeah.
And so if you, yes, it's more expensive, then your body's going to absorb it. Number one, you're not going to make expensive urine. Number two is they have less fillers. Now the fillers are what, like, a lot of the products are not good because the fillers themselves are not good. You know, they get like husks of corn and chop it up and put it in just, you know, that kind of stuff. So good multivitamin, absolutely. So we have electrolytes, we have multivitamin. And then this day and age, because I don't want excessive chronic inflammation, I'm a big firm believer in omega-3 supplementation.
So there you go. You just said electrolytes. Omega-3 is your number 2.
Yeah. There you go.
Would you say, you're seeing a lot on TV showing that many people are deficient in magnesium?
Yeah.
Or vitamin D. You think those are true? Like, many people are more deficient in those two.
It's interesting. Magnesium more so in coffee drinkers.
Okay.
People who drink a ton of coffee tend to run low on magnesium because of the absorption, right? Vitamin D is one that really throws me off. I don't know why we're seeing a pandemic.
I got tested. I was deficient in vitamin D. And I started reading a lot. A lot of people are deficient in vitamin D.
Yes, more than you think, you know? And it's not just sunblock. It's not just because we're not in the sun. Or even golfers who are in the sun who don't use sunblock, they're still low on vitamin D. So I can't figure that one out yet.
Really?
I think the genetics of vitamin D, there are like 10 steps that go from sunlight to vitamin D in the cell. You could have deficiency in any one of that. There's a huge heritage bias towards whether you tend to run low on vitamin D or not. But vitamin D controls a huge amount of bodily functions and genetics.
So it's really important.
Sleep, recovery, immune function, ability to burn fat, energy utilization, overall health, cancer surveillance,
heart health.
So, you know, the thing is, like, here's why you're low, I may not know. What I do know is vitamin D controls a huge amount of bodily functions and up to like 5,000 genes from what we can see. And so it controls immune function, cancer surveillance, your ability to burn fat, brain function, immune function, like so many, sleep, recovery.
So would you think it's important, we talked about electrolytes, omega-3, would you put vitamin D as a supplement to take?
I would put vitamin D if you get your levels tested. Because vitamin D levels
you take too much vitamin
Yes, that's a Goldilocks effect.
But your vitamin A, vitamin D are all soluble vitamins that you can take too much of.
Yes.
But I haven't heard anyone really take too much. I've heard of vitamin A, you know.
Toxicity, yes.
Toxicity.
But vitamin D, you want it to be between 40 and 55, if you're measuring in America, right? Too much is also no good. Too little is no good. But we really run low on this. But if you're running low on this, then I really, really strongly get that fixed, because that's one of those things that is a major, what I call a power leak, you know, because it's like, come on, your body is not going to work with the vitamin D.
I take 5,000 IUs.
Yeah.
Just a maintenance.
You take it vitamin K as well? Or no?
I take vitamin K, K2. I take 400 micrograms of vitamin K. And I've learned a lot because I went to a cardiologist, and, you know, just to let you know, I had a stent put in over 2 years.
Oh, shoot.
2 years ago. And
wow.
The thing was, I had no symptoms, shortness of breath. I had a little bit of water retention in my ankles that I noticed, and I thought it was just holding water. But I went because a lot of bodybuilders in their 50s were having heart attacks, and I said, you know what, I want to extensive studies, tests done, echocardiogram. I did everything, EKG. The one thing the doctor didn't recommend, and a friend recommended, was a calcium score.
I
did that calcium score, and the CT scan was really high.
Wow.
And when they did that, that's when the cardiologist said, hey, let's do, they went
angiogram.
They went all the way in, and they said, shit, you have a 70% blockage in one of your arteries. So they went in, put one stent. From that point, I started asking cardiologists, what about, taking K2, vitamin D? Oh, it doesn't really work, watch your diet. He basically told me to go on a vegan diet. And I'm like, going on a vegan diet. Another thing, we just
know who you are?
No, he knew who I was. And I said, listen, first of all, there's no way. He goes, well, if you want to prolong your life, stop eating meat.
He's right. There is a lot of data, a lot of science out there that shows that overconsumptions of meats are not good for you. And like if you look at the blue zones, they tend to eat proteins, small amounts of animal meats, right? Okay. But you're a bodybuilder.
Yeah, I do want to live long. You know, if I can live to 100, I want to live to 100 healthy. But he's like, stop eating meats now. You know, we'll stop eating red meats. And he said, eat more chicken.
Yeah, lean meats,
Which I've been, but I started bringing, you know, proteins like from red meats back in my diet.
Yeah.
My cholesterol. The one thing I don't believe in is taking statins. I don't know what you have. What's your thoughts on statins? Because I heard it has, you know, effects like that can cause dementia and all this.
Well, statins.
That cholesterol is not that bad for you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So that whole debate is, you know, first of all, when your cholesterol is high, I want to know, why is it high?
And mine wasn't high. Mine was on the board. It was 90, 99.
199 probably?
Yeah.
So my question will be like, if cholesterol is high, why is it high, right? Because here's the thing. Just like CRP, which is an inflammatory marker, right? Cholesterol is a natural antioxidant. So is it high because you're being exposed to a whole bunch of free radicals? It's going up as an antioxidant to mop it up? Is it high because genetically you're producing high amount of cholesterol from food, right? Like, why is it high? Number one. Number two, if the LDL is high, which type of LDL is high? Like, which particle is high, right? If it's the big bouncy ones, not so bad.
Not bad.
But if it's the small ones that are like BB guns that are going to penetrate the wall and cause damage, then you may have to do something.
And then what happens is the calcium sticks to this cholesterol.
Yeah, well,
it causes a cement.
Yeah, it kind of breaks holes in the wall.
Yeah.
Calcium and cholesterol like patch the hole up and they form a plaque. And so now the tube goes from this big to like this big because the plaque is there, right? And then thirdly, I want to know, are there natural ways to reduce this cholesterol? Like, is it so high that you need to go on a statin? Okay. Statins will increase the risk of all those diseases, partly because the effect it has on the mitochondria.
Yeah.
Okay. When you take statins, the way statins work to bring cholesterol down means you don't make CoQ10.
Okay, so you got to increase your CoQ10.
So if you are taking a statin, listen, anyone here, like if you are taking a statin, you have to take 200 milligrams of CoQ10. Please.
Take the CoQ10.
You need CoQ10. You need double the dose.
See, I take a medicine. I don't take a statin. I take Repatha, which is an injection. And it's not a lower the cholesterol.
So that's different, right? But a statin competes with CoQ10. So you run low on CoQ10, which is a key ingredient that a mitochondria uses to produce energy, which if you're talking about aging gracefully, every organ needs energy. So if the brain doesn't have energy, it ages faster. And that's when you get dementia, Alzheimer's and all that kind of stuff, right? The heart needs energy. The liver needs energy. Every organ, your eye, retina, everything.
Talking about supplement, I think that's an important supplement, CoQ10, unless you have.
I think
you're on a statin.
Over age of 50, generally speaking, you don't produce as much CoQ10. So typical dose is 100 milligrams. But if you're on a statin, you absolutely need to supplement with CoQ10. It'd be crazy not to do that, right?
Yeah.
So
and I do take it, CoQ10, omega-3s, vitamin D.
Yeah. So again, we're being strategic, right? Like I'm not just telling you like take all these things. Like there's people out there taking, you know, their whole day they're taking pills. Like that's not what I want either. I am first and foremost food first, and then supplement with what you want.
Well, that's why they're called supplements.
Yes.
You want to get everything from food.
From food.
But
as an expert, yes.
You supplement your diet. But the best way to know what to supplement with is doing these biomarkers.
Correct. You don't need to supplement. The body changes throughout the year. Changes throughout the seasons, based on sunlight, based on biorhythms, right? So you don't need to take the same thing all year long. So I'm very strategic because over supplementing, what you put in, if you don't need it, you have to break it down, you have to get rid of it. That takes energy, that takes processors. Like why? So I'm very strategic. How much, for how long, how often?
So even with supplements, they may be taken just for the winter. Yeah. Because you may not get vitamin D, not in the sun. And then as it goes to the summer, you hold back on your vitamin D because you don't really need as much, you know, because it's...
But if you test it, you'll know.
You'll know. So when will you do these biomarkers? Like if you have someone either for, you know, that wants to age gracefully or an elite athlete, how many times a year do you do these biomarkers?
So for an elite athlete, because that's your job, right? You cannot afford to leave anything unturned. I do my biomarkers every 3 months.
Every 3 months.
So every quarter. Every quarter we do this. So and depending where they are in the season, right? Usually at the start of the season, I want to see exactly what we're dealing with. So I do a full set of biomarkers. And then towards the latter half of the season, I repeat that whole thing. In between, I do 2 smaller versions.
So you do smaller.
But for most people, I think a minimum, if you're an athlete trying to really, or like wanting to age gracefully, twice a year. And again, it's not just doing the blood work, it's actually having someone interpret it and give you very strategic advice on what to do with this. Twice a year should be a good number.
Do it twice a year to check your biomarkers.
Yeah.
And that's complete blood work.
Yeah.
The other indicator is, well, the other one's a little bit more elite to measure.
Yeah, that one, yeah. But then you want to look at maybe stool. I think that's a really good biomarker to test, especially as you're aging. Once a year, check your stool, see what type of probiotics you need, what type of prebiotics you need. Do you need digestive enzymes to see that the gut health is so important. If the gut health is off, the brain is off. And now we know like the muscle, the gut, the brain, the mitochondria, they all talk to each other. So
it's very important, gut health as well. But there you have it. Thank you so much again.
Oh my God,
show.
absolutely.
I really
absolutely.
enjoyed this, Dr. Ara. I mean, I can pick your brain and we can go for hours.
We can go for hours.
But it's a great episode, Beyond the Muscle. You guys like the episode, please like it and please subscribe. Thanks again.